Hey, welcome to the vlog. It's Graham again. Today I'm going to do another record collection video. I wanted to show you guys, as the title states, the 3 coolest albums in my collection, as far as I'm concerned. As well as I'm going to show you the 3 lamest and, well, stupidest albums in my collection as well, just for fun. Before I get started with my coolest albums in the collection, I'll be honest with you, I don't have any, super priceless, expensive albums. How can something be expensive and priceless at the same time? That sentence didn't make any sense, but I tend to go for quantity over quality. I like to have a relatively complete collection, and I'll live with a little bit of surface noise, crackles, and pops, if it means I can get an album a little bit cheaper. So, yeah, I don't have anything that really needs to be framed, but I'll show you my 3 coolest albums. Number 1, this is Beatlemania with the Beatles. This came out, correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say that this came out November 22nd, 1963, which Americans will recognize as an important date because it's the day that Kennedy was assassinated. But it was at least released that week. I may be off on, it may not have been the exact day. This was not released in the United States. This is a Canadian exclusive album. As the cover would suggest, it is track for track the same as the UK release of With the Beatles, but with a new Beatlemania title. The liner notes are the same as the UK version, but it's got some excellent new notes on the front. The newspapers say a new disease is sweeping through Britain, and doctors are powerless to stop it. It's Beatlemania. This is essentially trying to sell a band that didn't really have a lot of popularity in North America yet. I'm not sure exactly, but I know that Capitol had the Canadian distribution rights for the Beatles in 1963, but not the US distribution. That belonged to VJ Records at the time, so Capitol could only issue Beatles stuff in Canada. And the VJ US issues weren't doing very well in the US at all, so you could argue that Beatles had more of a popularity in Canada a little bit earlier than they did in the States. Although the Beatles physically came to America first. Maybe that makes sense, that Beatles albums were being issued in Canada before the US, as Canada, is part of the Beatles Commonwealth. the British Commonwealth. This is on the original Capitol rainbow label. It's in its original mono. I cannot say for certain that it's a first pressing. It very well could be. All I can tell you is that it was this particular copy was definitely an early-ish pressing, issued anywhere between when it first came out in 63 and about 1968, but not later than that. Next up in my list of coolest albums, we move over to some hard rock with Cheap Trick. Like I said, not in the best shape. I don't have any near mint pristine stuff to show you, but this is Cheap Trick at Budokan, but not just any copy of Cheap Trick at Budokan. Look, it got some damage in the gatefold as well, but the album plays really well. This is the original 1978 Japanese pressing, complete with a booklet with all the Japanese lyrics and whatnot. Very, very cool booklet. So, this album was originally only released in Japan in 1978, but import copies started to make their way into the United States, which I believe is exactly what happened with this one, rather. Yeah, I believe that's exactly what happened with this one, is that it was a North American import copy, because the imports in the United States and Canada were flying off the shelves, and that's what prompted Epic Records to issue it finally in the US the following year in 1979. So this is probably an album that was on the shelf in North America before it was ever technically issued for that market. So I think that's very cool. Early Japan pressing of Cheap Trick at Budokan. third one, also from another country, Kiss Killers. Kiss is my favorite band, so of course I had to throw in some Kiss. This album came out in early 1982. It's a compilation album, technically, although Kiss did record 4 new songs. I'm a Legend Tonight, Down on Your Knees, Nowhere to Run, and Partners in Crime for this compilation. By early 1982, Kiss had pretty much alienated their entire United States fan base. And so this compilation album was issued virtually everywhere in the world except for North America, which makes it a bit of a collectible here. It was issued in Europe and Australia, Japan, South America, pretty much anywhere but North America. And if you'll notice, it's got a weird logo. Kiss. Looks like a couple of Zs. That's because this is a German pressing. If you're a Kiss fan, you know this, no doubt, but Kiss has the Lightning Bolt S's, which were actually banned in Germany because they look too similar to the Schutzstaffel logo, which is some wartime Nazi imagery, so very, very much banned in Australia. Actually, when Kiss would tour in Australia, Kiss used to always have a big, giant, light-up logo behind them on stage, and they had to actually make a new one, have it altered, because they were not allowed to show that imagery there, which is fair. Also, you've got an interesting red German Casablanca label, which is very different. It's a one-color label, very different from how they looked in North America. So that's pretty cool. Another little quirk about this album is that in the different countries it was issued, each different country seemed to have a slightly different track listing. Yeah, don't know why that is. Maybe based on how well those singles sold in those countries. Now, I'm going to move on to the 3 stupidest albums in my collection, and maybe this is the part I was most excited to show you guys. I'm going to start with another Kiss album released around that time, a few months earlier to be exact. This is Music from the Elder. I'll be covering it in more detail when I get to 1981 in my, I do year-by-year Kiss videos on this channel. But long story short, Kiss in 1981 decided it would be a great idea to make a rock opera called The Elder. This is Kiss we're talking about. They blow stuff up and they do like elaborate stage shows and they're like hard rock. Although they had recently done some more pop stuff, but for a band like Kiss to do a rock opera was a bizarre choice. Notice the famous Kiss faces and the makeup doesn't appear anywhere on this album. They were kind of trying to distance themselves and make a new concept. And yeah, this reads, "When the earth was young, they were already old." Such a heady, weird concept album. So the original track listing started with an orchestral fanfare into a kind of soft song about just a boy, and then he goes out on this odyssey and like meets the elders, and then there's a few good rock songs on side 2, but it's very slow to get going. So when Casablanca Records saw this or heard this album for the first time, they said, hell no, we are not issuing it like that. No one's going to listen to it. They're going to put the needle down and they're going to hate it 2 minutes in. So they actually shuffled the track listing to start with a song called The Oath, which is originally way deep there on side 2 of the original suggested track listing. Just because they said, you at least have to have a good, solid rock single to start the album. So they took a major concept by Kiss, they shuffled the song order, and perhaps it was for the best, because even with Casablanca intervening and changing the song order, the album tanked. The idea was they were going to make this album and then use the finances from the incredible success of the album to fund this opera that was going to tour around North America. Clearly, that never came close to happening. In 2014, when Kiss reissued their entire catalog on vinyl, they did something cool. Actually, the 97 CD remasters may have been the same. They did reinstate the original intended track listing, and I do have both versions. One thing about Kiss is they issue a lot of dumb stuff because they think their fans will buy anything. But I think I may be proof of that. Whoops. I do have both versions. Alright. Album number 2 in my list of dumbest albums I own. I just found this. Having Fun with Elvis on Stage. Colonel Tom Parker was an insane person. Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker. If you look at this map of the United States, it shows all of the dates that Elvis, or all of the cities rather, that Elvis performed in the first half of the 1970s. He did not ever, at least not in the 70s when he got back into touring, ever perform outside in the United States. Not even in Canada, not in Europe, nowhere else, although there was heavy demand for it. The reason was that I believe Colonel Tom Parker had some sort of outstanding warrants and was unable to tour, was physically unable to leave the United States by law. Not Elvis. Elvis was fine, but because his manager, Tom Parker, couldn't, he refused to book Elvis anywhere outside of the United States. That's just a fun fact. But also because he was crazy, I believe it was the record label, RCA, said that he had to give them, obviously, a percentage on all Elvis stuff because they owned the material. I'm not sure who exactly owned the material and who he had to pay to, but I know that he was unhappy with having to give a cut of his earnings to whoever owned the rights to the music. And he knew that under contract, any album of Elvis music, they would have to take a cut of. So he found a loophole. By loophole, I mean, he said, well, if I can't make all of the money off an album of Elvis music, I'm going to release an Elvis album completely devoid of music. Yep. Just to get a higher percent of the cut on the album. Just as kind of an FU to the record label, I guess. Although it's issued by RCA, I don't know. But in any case, he decided to issue an album of Elvis speaking in between songs on stage. As you see in the top corner here, it's a talking album only. Came out in 1974. My copy's in surprisingly good shape. Not that I've ever listened to it all the way through. Not sure if this is an original pressing or not, but I don't know how often this would have been reissued. But yeah, this album is absolutely notorious for being one of the dumbest ideas for an album ever. But I knew the story of this album when I bought it, and I picked it up just as kind of a conversation piece, as being like, oh wow, this album is so stupid that I have to own it. I just have to. So I do. That's the story of how Colonel Tom Parker was insane and made some questionable decisions. The third one is not so much a common album, and for good reason. This is Ray Charles performs live on stage at the Palladium. It's destroyed. The front cover is just completely gone. Got it in a dollar bin. And I knew it was in terrible shape. I didn't recognize any of these songs, but I thought, hey, Ray Charles live album in a dollar bin? Might as well get it, see if it plays. This album is actually a total lie. It's a complete scam. It's not a Ray Charles live album. It's not even a Ray Charles album. Shows you how different the rules for what you could sell, because it's clearly false advertising. Ray Charles recorded live on stage at the Palladium. No star on the front cover, no little disclaimer. Although if you read the back, it says something about the Mojo Blues Band. The moods of rhythm and blues are vividly performed by Mojo and the Mojo Chai Fours. Blah, blah, blah. This is an album recorded by the Mojo Blues Band with no affiliation by Ray Charles. But in order to use the Ray Charles name on the cover, I assume illegally, they used 2 of Ray Charles' earliest demos and just plunked them onto the album. Not live, not recorded live on stage at the Palladium. Just 2 of Ray Charles' earliest singles that I don't know if they were in the public domain or if they had just paid a nominal fee to get the rights to those 2 songs and filled out the rest of the album with songs by this Mojo Blues Band. Just bizarre. So this is an album that was designed to fool people into buying it, and it 40, 50 years later fooled me into buying it. So it's still working, I guess. Such a bizarre album, issued by Vernon Records. Such a weird thing. I did some research on the album just because I couldn't believe that it wasn't Ray Charles. I looked it up and it is. Alright, so that's my story. That's my story. That's the story of some of these really dumb albums and some of these really, really cool albums. Hope you enjoyed this video. Love digging into my record collection to show you guys some cool and not so cool stuff. Thanks so much for watching. You can check out the description. I'm also a professional musician myself, if you don't know. And in the description are links to where you can find my music, where it's sold or streamed online, as well as links to, or not links, but a list of all of my upcoming concert dates, as well as a few radio appearances that I'm going to be doing this week. So exciting. Yeah, like this video if you liked what you saw, subscribe to this channel if you've been enjoying my videos, and you can ring the notification bell if you would like to be notified every time I upload a new video, which should be tomorrow and most days for the foreseeable future. Thanks so much for watching. Had a lot of fun making this video, and I'll catch you again tomorrow.